All right, so it's 3 p.m. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We are all set to begin with another stimulating session on connecting the dots. First of all, we would like to thank our esteemed speakers for being part of this panel discussion. Welcoming Mr. Setu Shah, Global HCM Product Strategy Director, Oracle, Ms. Gauri Das, Senior Vice President, India Factoring and Finance Solutions Private Limited, Dr. Anjana Vinod, Founder and Director of Impact Enhancer, and Mr. Shashidhar Ambatipuri, Senior Manager at Pegasystems. Embracing failure as a fundamental component of success is a mindset that champions growth, innovation, and resilience. The concept of failing forward is not about celebrating failure itself, but rather understanding its intrinsic value as a stepping stone towards improvement. It involves leveraging setbacks as opportunities for learning, innovation, and personal or professional development. Our esteemed panelists would share their views on this insightful topic, the art of failing forward, embracing a culture of continuous improvement. HRA welcomes you all to the session on connecting the dots. To know more about HRA and its events, I would request all our participants to visit the link and details posted in the chat window. It would be great to have all the participants' feedback. We will be running a poll before the Q&A session, so request all the participants to kindly give your feedback on the session. I now take the privilege to introduce our moderator for this session, Mr. Shashidhar Ambatipudi, Senior Manager, Pegasystems. Shashidhar is a seasoned HR professional with a track record across diverse industries, including ITES, professional services, and IT product organizations. His unwavering belief in the transformative potential of HR has driven him to revolutionize organizations through effective people strategies. Shashidhar currently serving as Senior Manager HRBP and driving the DEIB Diversity, Equity, Inclusion and Belonging efforts for the India region at Pegasystems. His initiatives have created a positive impact on the company's culture, fostering an environment where all employees feel valued and empowered to thrive. Beyond his HR expertise, Shashidhar embodies a holistic approach to personal and professional growth. As a certified NLP practitioner and budding ICF coach, he leverages the power of neuro-linguistic programming to foster positive relationships and effective communication within the workplace. Additionally, Shashidhar promotes the importance of holistic well-being and work-life balance among employees, serving as a certified yoga trainer. You can follow him on LinkedIn. The link for the same has been shared in the chat window. Now, without wasting much time, I will hand over the platform to Mr. Shashidhar. Over to you, Shashidhar.
Faisal, that was almost like a numbing introduction. Thank you so much. And thank you, HRAI. The topic in hand, firstly, is not something that we all pause and reflect on a daily basis, right? It requires a sense of reflection to pause, take lessons, reflect on the past, and really adapt as we move forward to move from a mindset that says, I failed, to actually what can I learn from it? And that's what we have an expert panel here today to discuss. And I'll be really glad to introduce some of them today, starting off with Dr. Anjana Vinod. Doctor, thank you for being here today. With over 3 decades of experience, she has seen and done work across industries. And this is something that caught my attention, right? From banking, retail, pharma, IT, entertainment, government. I mean, she has seen several facets of the whole industry. So something we'll leverage in the conversation. What also stuck to me is she also holds a doctorate, and in a very unique space. It's called theater in training. And as a budding MCC coach, master certificate holder in coaching with ICF, definitely the viewpoint is going to be strong. Dr. Anjana, once again, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. Absolutely be absolute pleasure to be in the august company of such eminent personalities. I could say that. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me here.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Great. We move on to Gauri Das, Senior Vice President, India Factoring and Finance Solutions Private Limited. Gauri, thank you for being here. With close to 20 years of experience in crafting and aligning HR strategies and in deep work in several areas of HR, she brings a very unique viewpoint, whether it is performance management, careers, capabilities, employee experience, whether it is effective communication or even employer brand. Gauri, you have had several arenas of expertise, and we hope to leverage it in the conversation today. What struck me in your introduction was the fact that you carry a lot of experience in startups as well as well-being organizations. That's a that's a very interesting duo that you carry. So welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
Great, great. Last but not the least, we have Setu Shah. He's the Global HCM Product Strategy Director at Oracle and a very accomplished digital tech professional. He comes with close to 2 decades of experience and aligns his passion for HR with product management that helps SaaS companies build HR transformation solutions. Now, interestingly, he's not new to any of the webinars. He writes, he gives lectures, he even mentors startups. So Setu, that's a very unique contribution to the discussion today. Thank you for joining.
Thanks a lot, Sashidhar. Pretty excited to be part of the panel and with such esteemed panelists as well. So excited here.
Super, wonderful. All right, the topic really is the vast blue sky. So we need to have some sense of perimeter around it. So why don't we start with this? Maybe I'll ask Dr. Anjana first to take the first 2 to 3 minutes and really set the tone on what does this topic rhyme with you in your experience.
Thank you so much. And you know what? One thing very interesting when the topic was discussed with me, and when I got this call saying that, would you like to be a panelist on a topic like this? So the concept, when the word came, failing forward, I was like, advance me only, you set yourself up for failure. Fantastic. So you are not worried about success. What more can you ask for in life? Brilliant concept. But then later on, when I was like, yeah, definitely. I have tons of reasons to tell you where all I can fail. And then I started thinking that, you know what, Anjana, actually, if you had to reflect back, are you really setting up yourself for failure? Or are you learning from what you have done in the past that probably led to a failure? There's a beautiful quote which says, you should learn from your mistakes. But in the alpha age that we are in, I don't think learning from your mistakes is only going to help, but learning from every mistake whoever has done is something that we all do. Look at LinkedIn. It was buzzing when lessons learned from World Cup 2023, 2024 happened, right? 2023,
Yes.
When India lost the World Cup. The whole world was talking about what lessons have we learned. Well, that's what I call brilliance of failing forward. So that's my 2 bits on it.
Brilliant. Thank you. Very informative. I'm going to touch back on the whole generational angle to this whole ability to learn. Okay, thanks for bringing up Gen Alpha. But yes, Gauri would like to hear from you next, please.
Yeah, thanks, Shashidhar. And Dr. Anjana, you brilliantly put. And similar case with me also. When I heard the topic, I was like, wow, I have heard about failure conference. Even that is a new concept. But here we are going to talk about failures, which is not easy. And what makes it even more difficult is the societal norms that we have. So when we talk, we always say, Sharma ji ke bete ne ye achieve kar liya. Verma ji ki beti yahan pahunch gayi. Where are you? So it's all about क्या हम better कर रहे हैं. Already we are not thinking about what we are not able to do. But at the same time, when you see the report card, the focus is on your area of improvement always. We play with our weaknesses. We don't play with our strengths. So here was an opportunity to talk about the areas of improvement, the failures, the learning story. And it is fascinating to be here. And I'm looking forward to a wonderful discussion here on this.
Fantastic. The Sharma ji ka beta thing just so sticks in the brain. I've heard it a few years ago, but every time it's new. Thank you. Thank you. Setu, your initial input on the topic. What do you think?
Thanks a lot, Sashidhar. I can't definitely top Sharma ji and Verma ji ka beta. But I was just reading a couple of stories, and one thing that struck me was, the story of how a lot of these inventions came into being. And a lot of them were actually failed projects that were converted or pivoted to usability. So, say for example, I'm sure most of us have used a Post-it sometime in our lives. Now, Post-it was more of a failed project where somebody created a weak adhesive in an organization named 3M, and he the person was extremely shy and unhappy about it. That okay, I have created an adhesive which is weak. My organization prides and has programs of creating the most stickiest and the most strongest adhesive. So the guy simply goes and talks to a couple of his peers and colleagues, and incidentally, one of them recognizes that, hey, why don't we use this? This does not scratch the surface a lot on which it is stuck. And
Mm.
that's how the idea of Post-its came into being.
Mm.
So, a couple of takeaways that I would take from the topic as well as the story would be obviously, I think failure is going to be a part of life and organization and work, and in general, whatever we do. But then again, how much can we learn from it? How much can we pivot or reuse it? And how much does it help us set our expectations? So that was something that I gathered from the Post-it story and
Wonderful.
wanted to share here.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, the 3M story is actually a celebrated case study now, right? So fantastic, great example. In fact, question back to you on the same thing, right? When we look at failure, right, it's the fear of failure that either propels you to an innovative mindset, or you draw back and say that I will only adopt the beaten path, the safe track, right? So if we look at organizations and considering your experience, right, innovation versus ability to take risk with fear of failure, how does that balance out? What has been your viewpoint on that?
All right. So I think if we look at organizations more as a business in terms of serving an individual society, or more importantly, any of their consumers. Um, I think way back in the industrial age, what used to happen was that there was a challenge of scale. So, say for example, if I have any product, be it a Post-it or a laptop or anything else, for me to build it on scale used to be a huge challenge. And that is where a lot of those traditional and amazing concepts of assembly line and service lines, etc., came into being. So that was an age where you wanted people to be extremely disciplined, and you wanted them just to toe the line to ensure that you achieve a scale. Today's age is extremely different. The consumer behavior is very, very different. While availability may not be a grave challenge, consumer demands are for more and more interesting, innovative, and exciting products and services that they want. They want to solve newer problems, and for many or any organization to do this, they need to thrive and foster a culture of innovation within their own organization. And as I think it's said in numerous books as well as in a lot of movies like Three Idiots, that innovation can't thrive in the middle of fear. And hence, the fear of failure can paralyze innovation within organizations. So it basically hinders risk-taking appetite of a lot of individuals and teams. It stifles creativity as well as progress. So
Yeah.
setting realistic goals can really help professionals focus on their creativity and encourage them to take risks that are more likely to pay off, or at least learn a lot from it to set your expectations right.
Fair enough. But the question I have, and maybe Gauri, let me pitch your expertise here as well. You've done considerable work in performance management. When it comes down at an organization level, I think totally agree. Innovation requires fail and fail fast, right? But when it comes down to an individual level and in performance management, etc., does it really happen in organizations? How do you still tell individuals it's okay to fail, put in efforts, and still you will be treated as much, right? Does it play out on the ground? What is your view on that?
Yeah, thanks for bringing it up because
Mm.
it's one thing, like you rightly said, to talk, but when it comes to actual implementation, and especially in an area where stakes are very, very high. Say, for
Yeah,
example, for us, yeah, HR professionals, if you are presenting it to board, can you actually fail? Yeah, or if you are dealing with an auditor, for us, it's RBI, can I go to them and give something and fail there? Is it possible? So the stakes are extremely high, and it does happen. I have made certain mistakes, spelling mistakes during board presentation. It happens. So it to answer directly, is it possible? It is possible, but I have learned through the career that there are two zones in our lives. So one is a learning zone, and another one is performance zone. Learning zone is where we continuously keep on developing and improving ourselves, and performance zone is the one where we are really, really working on it. So the examples like boardroom or the RBI thing, it is the performance zone. And if I need to be really without failures, I need to be working on learning zone. So can organizations support? Yes, they can support. Our accountability should be extremely high in the performance zone, but organizations must create learning zones for us. Or if they don't do, we should definitely create for ourselves. And how do we create learning zones? Connecting with peers, like we are coming together and we are going to learn from each other's failures and the way you take it forward. Bouncing it off with your mentor. So before I take my presentation to board, like I said, I have made a mistake many years ago. I now go to Grammarly probably and I check if there's anything which is missing, or pass it on through a human eye, which we call 4-eye principle or maker checker principle. Or say, for example, the audit thing. So check everything, bring in processes. So that is one way for people. So even if maker is not able to get rid of all mistakes, the checker will do. So back to learning zone, having a mentor, having discussing it. The simulations are also very, very important. If I am going to present something, or if I'm bringing up something new, can I discuss it with people and they can play different, all six hats can they play, and they can tell me what is going good or what is not going good. So to answer in summary, can organizations create it? Definitely in the learning zone. I would not recommend doing it in the performance zone. But if it happens, like it happened with me, they must be tolerant. They must be open to accepting the failures. And had one of my organizations not accepted it, I wouldn't be here today. So yes, the answer is yes.
Superb, superb. But the distinction is actually very clear. Here is a zone meant for you to experiment, fail, versus your learnings out there to actually deliver value. We shouldn't get confused with those both. I really love that one. Dr. Anjana, anything to add here? I have a very different question for you coming up, something from your introduction that I picked up, but any thoughts on this?
You know what? One thing, when I heard both of them speak, one thing that came to my mind was very beautifully put across, where we say innovation is very important. And very recently, I was, designing content for one of my programs, and I needed to come up with something which is about innovation, and innovation leading to success, leading to greed. And I had to come up with an example that probably people could resonate with and stuff like that. And what better than Byju's if we had to talk about? Look at the kind of innovation it came. It actually shook the entire education, the edutech fraternity, because they had such practical things. But where did that innovation lead? Was it successful? Well, yes. But did the success sustain? Probably no. And what could be the reason? And what can we learn from this so that we going forward know that everything that you innovate is there to stay to help people, but let that innovation and success not get on to greed, because then that innovation collapses.
Superb, superb. That's a great example from Byju's, by the way. In fact, similar things were going on in my mind where AI has disrupted everything that we know in terms of offerings, especially learning and recruitment. Great, we'll come back to that one. But picking up from your introductory line, right, around the Gen Alpha piece that stayed with me. As generations are progressing, Gen X, Y, Alpha, Beta, I don't know what's coming up next. There is clearly a different sense of peer pressure, need for success, speed of success, and several other things. How does this topic evolve for the new workforce that's actually already in the organizations, the Gen Z and below? Yeah.
So, you know what? One thing that comes to my mind is, what is success for you? Okay.
Mm.
I'm sure most of us sitting here would be driving a car and stuff like this. I always use this analogy when I talk about success, the hunger for success.
Right.
In a car, we have a front sheet, correct? And if you're driving on the highway, you have like
Mm.
plethora of cars which are going ahead, a few tons of cars. And then you always feel that, oh my God, he's ahead of me. Let me overtake him. And then you have the rear view mirror, which is there,
Mm.
which clearly shows you the people you have overtaken and reached where you have. Success cannot be a limiting factor. Similarly, failure, we say, cannot be fatal. Failure is a part to success. I'm sure all of us have seen this image where you put blocks of failure to reach where you want to reach. Today's generation, very honestly, is not a number-driven organization or a number-driven system, but yet we are still in the evolving stage, if I had to say it that way. I remember when I was a kid, okay, not that I'm a dinosaur age, but I'm just saying. So when I was a kid, I remember there were only three things. Intelligent people take science, mediocre take commerce, duffers take arts. So when my daughter was in 10th and I was telling her, this logic, she looked at me and she said, Mama, do you know what St. Xavier's College in Arts closed at? They closed at 97.35%. Which duffer gets that score, Mama? And that's the time I started thinking that, you know what? Our generation alpha is very different. For them, innovation can come from anything and everywhere. Post-it was an accident that you said, but believe me, people do these accidents to gain success. And I think COVID taught us all of this. Look at the kind of innovations that happened during COVID times.
Amazing.
Everyone, whether you are a PhD, whether you are a doctorate, whether you are an MBA or a double MBA or Harvard graduate, doesn't matter. Right from the street, innovations have started. And that's the core of it. When we talk about Generation Alpha, they are far more sorted than what probably our generation is. Fortunately or unfortunately, we are still holding them back with numbers. And I think it's time that we let the number game go now. That's my 2 bits on it.
Superb, superb. Let me bring it down to an individual perspective. I think at an organization level, well said, all done. Clearly, this is not something, at least personally, I can say that I learned in college or school on how do I cope with failure, right? I know the drive for results. I know what it takes there, but if I don't, what is my coping mechanism out of it, right? You all have your own individual experience of it, right? At various stages of your career. How do you come out of it versus how do you take the lesson out of it rather than the emotional burden out of it? If each of you could talk through any individual experience of your own, any random order.
So I'll go and then probably we could take it there. I'll just continue with the flow. So, there is a very interesting statement that you said, that coping with failure. Tell me which school has ever taught us that? Right from the grassroots level. We only talk about success. We only say, oh, if you score 80%, if you pass, if you do this, if you do that, we will do this. None of this entire list that we have created talks about failure. What happens if you're not successful? What happens if you don't beat it? What happens if this doesn't go through?
Yeah.
Well, there is life beyond that, and there is probably something more which is there. And I strongly believe that whatever happens, happens for a reason. And let me tell you one very simple example. I'm sure everybody can relate with this. When the Twin Tower fell, there were close to around 12 people who were interviewed who survived it. And you will be surprised, the top 3 reasons why people survived it was, 1, because coffee fell on his shirt when he was having coffee and he had to change his shirt, because of which he got delayed. The second person is because his garage door was locked. He couldn't find the key to unlock the door. The third person could not reach it because when he came running, the lift door closed and he could not get inside that lift and he had to walk out of the building because he had some other call to make. There was no network. We always are at the right place at the right time. The only thing is we don't understand it. And the day we start understanding that, probably we'll start accepting failure as beautifully as we accept success. That's my 2 bits on it.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah. Sure. Gauri, Setu, anything from you?
Sure. So I'll go next. Citing one of my personal experiences or personal failures. So in one of the past consulting firms, we where the mantra is always that make sure that everybody's billable, right? That's the concept of service oriented firms. So we launched a program to create reusable IPs, intellectual properties, assets, and create knowledge sharing sessions, because we found that possibly by increasing capabilities of individuals and by creating those reusable material or assets, we'll be able to improve quality and deliver better. About 6 months in the program, and the program failed miserably. We had almost somewhere between 1 to 2 assets, and it was I mean, we had a face to the walls. Uh, this is where we all thought that, okay, maybe this is not a part of how a consulting culture should work. So do we accept the failure and gleefully move ahead? And that's where, taking a lot of heart and soul, we kind of went to the senior leadership to claim our failure. And they asked that, we are not interested in who didn't work, okay, or who didn't deliver the IPs or assets. Rather, they asked that, okay, what is it that didn't work? And how can you make it work the next time?
Right.
Okay. So in terms of asking some of those, and that's the psychological safety net as well that the leadership gave us. And that's where I think, all of us, we came up with brilliant ideas. There were people on the ground who said that, maybe we should start bottom up, maybe we should start top down. There should be, other various initiatives and angles to it. So a lot of interesting ideas came out. So basically, a couple of things that does align to a lot of this at a leadership level or at an individual level is to firstly budget some time resources for experimentation and keeping that slack for failures. I'm speaking a little bit of a project management language in the middle, or product management at times, but basically keeping that flexibility with you and with your team to experiment and fail a little bit, fostering a culture of psychological safety where, I mean, you don't chastise or you don't start a blame game or you don't pick up accountability on who didn't do and who did what, but more importantly, collaborate and get everyone to seek and understand more of learnings. And lastly, and the most important one would be to celebrate effective closures and learnings with the team and propagate it as much as possible. You may not want to implement and adopt each and every learning that you get from every failure. At times, it is just accepting that, okay, these are some of the aspects that are going to fail. So even that expectation setting at times is great without breaking the culture or breaking the organization completely.
Brilliant, brilliant. The one you said around talk back and reflect on the failed projects and then create it. There's a term for that I recently came across in a HBR article. I think it's sunshine projects, which basically is what failed and it's a debrief of sorts. But that I've tried it personally, and let me tell you, the game shifts to everybody in the room trying to make it a success by giving ideas rather than dismantling the whole effort and saying, here are the 330 things that you have done wrong, right? It's just a mindset, right? So wonderful. Good points there. Gauri, anything from your experience?
Yes, definitely. I would also like to share a personal story. So many years ago, I had applied for HR 40 under 40 from Jombay. A very long journey, 7 months long journey. You go through assessment center, you do multiple assignments every week, 3 sessions, and after that, you become 100 under 40. Very happy, achieved that fire for achievement, fire for success that we all have. Very, very good. Then comes the another jury round and the final leg for 40 under 40, and from 100 under 40 to 40 under 40. And I was super excited, very well prepared. And I did my presentation rehearsals and showed it to everyone and picked up everyone's brain and all of that. Presented to jury, and I was not selected as 40 under 40.
Okay.
Huge pain. I could not make it. It's a lot of ego also, that why amongst those 100 people I was not chosen as top 40. Why am I in the last 60? While the journey started with even the 3,000 people, you would still think that why I could not make it to the top 40. So very, very bad. Processing it, because I am in meditation also, so it helps a lot. Processing those emotions becomes very, very important. And like Setu said, it's about accepting it first of all. So if you accept, you will move forward. If you not, every time you will feel that I will fail again. This is how the victim mindset, that this is how life plays with me. Maybe jury was biased, or maybe whatever I did was not right, or people
Right.
are like after my life, right?
It's not easy.
So there can be two ways of looking at it, and thankfully I looked at it positively. And again, I would go back to Setu, and like you said, we always say pick up learnings from your failure and apply them. Practically नहीं होता है. कई बार you will not do anything. कई बार you will be happy, just that you accepted it, you processed your emotions, and you moved forward. So I also moved forward. Then I went to Economic Times Young HR Leader, and there also multiple rounds, but I could make it there. So the overall perspective that I'm trying to bring up is, you will not win always. Accept it. You will make mistakes irrespective of whatever efforts you are putting in. There will be situations, because perfection doesn't exist. So process your emotions, accept that failure is part of the journey, and move forward.
Super. Perfection doesn't exist, but perfect practice always does. Anjana, go ahead. You're on mute. Yeah.
Sorry, I just want to add one thing. When Gauri was saying this, I remember have you ever seen a sports event, and you'll have these 1, 2, 3 positions which are there. So
Right,
you'll
right.
have the one guy who is grinning away to glory, and you will have the bronze guy who is grinning away to glory, except the silver medalist, because he's regretting losing gold.
Right. Yes. There is an whole psychology concept around it. The 2 aimed for 1 didn't get, 3 is happy to just even get in the top 3.
Exactly.
And 1 is, of course, the standing tallest. Yeah, amazing. Great. Okay, we are at midpoint of our conversation. I want to break down the depth and seriousness with which you are there. And I want to ask something very personal question to you all. Treat it as a rapid fire, but feel free to give your detailed responses too. I want to understand from you all a book or a video that really changed your perspective on this whole approach to failing forward, if any. And no sequence. Fastest unmute first.
So for me, it was one of the non-fiction books that was recommended by one of my managers or seniors earlier. It was Question Thinking, Change Your Questions, Change Your Life, by Marley J. Adams, I think, if I'm not wrong. That is a book that I strongly advocate and recommend to a lot of people. That definitely had a profound impact on me, saying that if you look at things in terms of perspectives rather than your own perception of things, then that's a magnanimous change that you can do. You can grow a lot, you can succeed a lot, and definitely you can learn a lot.
Wonderful. Reframing is actually an NLP concept, which
Yes.
tells you to
Yes.
change the whole perspective on the problem. You'll come up with solutions that you wouldn't have otherwise thought. So fantastic. Good one. All
So
right.
for
I'm
me,
curious.
For me,
sorry, go ahead, Gauri. Okay, so for me, Think Straight was the book that kind of stuck with me for a very long period of time, which talks about change your thoughts and change your life. Exactly the way what you said it right now, or NLP concept. The only 2 things that I'll say that this book taught me was, it was not what if, it was even if.
See, just that phrase changes viewpoint, right? Fantastic. Gauri, you were saying.
For me, it's mindset, the psychology of success from Carol Dweck, very, very common one. I'm
Yeah.
sure everybody has heard about it. It's about the growth mindset and fixed mindset. But what really stuck a chord was power of yet. You are not there yet, but you can do it. So the example that she cites in the book, that a school in US awards you not yet if you don't pass in a semester. They don't call you a failure, because failure is a full stop, and not yet is you are on the journey. You could not do it now, but you would be able to do it very soon. So that is something which actually changed a lot of things for me. The rewiring, I would say, this book is responsible for that to a large extent.
Super, brilliant. Audience, I want to tell you, you're getting some recommendations of good titles. Please make a note. Do read. I mean, at least 2 out of the 3 that I haven't heard before. I'm going to try it out. I also want to share that personally for me, as advised by my coach several years ago, journaling really helped me reposition my thinking. I initially thought, what extra is it going to do except waste paper? But trust me, it's truly transformative if you do it for a time period. I used to start writing incidents that just really didn't fit in my mental framework. And then as I started writing, I started questioning my own beliefs rather than the person who did something, right? How else could have I approached it? 2 months down the line, I had to drag myself to the book. But from month 3 onwards, trust me, I was waiting for the post dinner 15-minute slot where I would write something and reflect. So wonderful. Great stuff.
So, Shashi, I want to add one very quick example. So, when you talk about journaling, so I'm a ICF certified coach, and during one of my coaching sessions, I had this lady who was one of my coachees. I'm one of the breast cancer coaches India has, and I do a lot of coaching for breast cancer survivors. So this lady was, I wouldn't even say in the downward stream, underground negativity. It was that level of negativity that she had. So, one of the things she said is, Anjana, today I can't tell you the life I am leading. It's so many problems I have. And I was like, fantastic. You know what? Let's do this. Today's call, I'll not charge you for today's coaching call, but we will end the call moment you say, I am done. She said, okay. So I said, I want you to take a blank paper and pen, and I want you to start writing down every single problem of your life, which you said you have. She smiled and she said, you will have to cancel all your coaching calls, Anjana. This is going to take somewhere close to around 4.5, 5 hours. I said, given. You will not charge me for that. I said, given, I'm telling you. If you want, I'll put it on the stamp paper, email, send it to you right now. Just start writing. Shashi, you'll be surprised. 3.5 minutes later, she said, I don't know what to write next.
See,
So, there is so much that cooks up in our mind, and journaling, like you very rightly said, just places everything on the holder so beautifully. We can just relate to it so well.
Absolutely. It's very surprising that it's actually the loop of thoughts than really so many problems that actually exists. It's really the weight of that 1 or 2 big things only. Fantastic example, Anjana. Wonderful. All right. Some of you referenced the word adaptability during your earlier part of the conversation. That's something I want to pick up, right? Back in the day in school, this question was asked by my teacher saying that, dinosaurs were extinct, but some species have survived. Say, for example, cockroach, right? Why did cockroaches survive and not dinosaurs when it came to the Ice Age? Any answers? I said, no clue. What, God's blessings maybe? No. The fact is, that's the species that is the most adaptable among all the forms of life. That's how they have seen through Ice Age. They can survive in water, they can swim, they can survive without food, anything at all, right? Adaptability. So taking the leaf from adaptability and really looking at changing dynamics and the world that we live in, where every year there's a black swan event going on, right? How can adaptability as a value really be cultivated, both at an individual and at an organizational level? How do you think we can really help individuals see through it in their pursuit of overcoming failure mindset and really progressing to success? And again, open question. A lot of googlies. I hope I'm not because you guys are giving so many rich insights that I'm forming questions on the go, by the way.
Okay. So I think, individually or as an organization, I feel adaptability is a word that we need to probably put it up as a word given in the Bible, if I had to put it that way. I mean, it's a God's word if I had to say that. And the reason why I say adaptability is so important, and people who survive with adaptability are the one who's, sustain and move ahead in life. Tons of examples, if you look at people with a lot of limitations who come out in the open to do so many things. I'm going to cite my own life example here. 21 years ago, I was diagnosed with, a very critical stage of breast cancer. The entire right side of my breast I had to undergo mastectomy. It had to be removed and stuff like this. Now, typically, if we had to talk about a woman's body, and if you had to ask anybody, if you had to diagrammatically show me a woman, it would be like this, an hourglass figure. You would never show a figure of a woman without a breast or, with one breast missing. And the world looks at you in that way. So for me, when I came back and wanted to go back into my corporate life, which I continued to, somewhere that missing part always was there. And I felt that, oh my God, even if casually somebody looked at me, I was like, maybe he knows, see, he's looking at me from that. From there to adapting to what I have and taking ahead and living my life with that, I think that's what adaptability is all about. Okay, you know what? This is what is the fact of life, and it's not there. I remember when my doctor told me that, Anjana, you have 6 months to survive, and it's, almost spread on your lymph nodes and everywhere. The choice that I had was to give up and leave it, or adapt to it and very clearly say that, hey, you know what? Even if it is there, it is there. So I have to adapt to it and live with it. Now, just on the lighter side, the doctor who said that is not there and I'm still there. But more on a serious front, if I had to take it, it's all about what are you adapting to? Are you adapting to the change and the new you? Because when you start adapting and you start accepting yourself with that, the universe tends to accept you even better. Even when I look at it from an organizational front, organizations which moved and adapted to the situation survived, which didn't, kind of vanished and died a very natural death. I don't think more better than COVID could be an example for us to say what adaptability really meant and how brilliantly all of us adapted to this Zoom culture, which was not there. Look at what our education system did. Till yesterday, the student was in the class, and today teacher had to put the entire curriculum online and teach. They were not used to these. Look at what computers did to people. I remember my dad used to have paper and pen and he used to do that. Today he uses computer. I mean, there are times where I tell him, Dad, stop using Word. Yeah, use Excel. For me, it's so easy to say that to him. But at the age of 70 plus, when he is adapting to stuff like this, it talks about sustainability. It talks about how he's still there in the market, beating probably chartered accountants and stuff like this, learning the new age technology. Everything that we are doing. If I look at my mom, who used to probably have the traditional oven thing, doing certain things, the kind of change she has done in her cooking style is like, sometimes I had to look at her and ask her, huh? How did you do this? I mean, how many of you knew that if you put a green chili in a bowl of warm milk, it converts into curd the next day morning? I mean, really, that's what adaptability is all about. I didn't have curd in the house and this is what my mom did. So that's what adaptability for me means.
Wonderful, wonderful. There's a lot of acceptance. There's a lot of, look forward than backward, really, that came out. Fantastic. And when I put that to organizations, and we discussed this a while ago, saying that we can learn from our mistakes, we can learn from other mistakes as well, which means we can learn from our own experience, we can learn from the successes of others as well. So question on collaboration, maybe Gauri, specific to you on this one, right? When there are several and there are no individual heroes in organization, it's all teams, right? That's the fundamental building block of organization of today. So how best can we really foster in an organization that sense of collaboration and learn from each department and make everything as a success which is collective and not very individual, right? How do you think that can really be a messaging within the organization?
Yeah, very important piece, because we still have most of the appraisals as individual appraisals, while, like you rightly said, and I totally believe, no one wins alone, and it takes a village for anyone to to achieve something, to move forward. Even if we look at our own lives, there are so many hands who have helped us move forward, uplifted us, and that's how we reach where we are today. So for organizations, I think certain things which I have seen in my career or I have heard from somewhere, I would share that. First of all, you need to tweak the appraisal system as well, because you cannot go on doing two opposite things. It's very, very conflicting. It does not go hand in hand. Second, bring in more platforms. Say, for example, a fun club. It's a kind of employee engagement events. I'm not talking about the full engagement thing, but the events piece. Can you bring people from different functions? That would be a place for people to collaborate. The forums like Samvad, where you bring people from different teams, or focus groups, where you bring people from different teams, try to understand what can be done better, what is going good. So, more and more platforms where you bring people together. A very small practice like we have team lunches or team dinners. Instead of that, can it be made cross functional? Because if you have to, you make one as your regular thing with your team, and one you bring in cross functional teams, the teams which are really, really interdependent on each other. So some of these practices, but the most important piece here is psychological safety, and everybody needs to be on the same platform. Humility is very, very important. So from organizations perspective, certain initiatives can be taken, the like 3-4 examples that I cited, but overall it is about the culture from the top. Is it a collaborative culture or it's a competitive culture? And for me, the mantra is collaboration over competition always. When you don't, you can't compete, you go and collaborate and make it a even bigger strength. So that's what I would say.
Awesome, awesome. Several set of practical tips. Thank you, Gauri. That's really helpful. Setu, anything for you to add on, since you have seen a lot of a different vantage point to SaaS organizations and other things, right?
So while I think, talking to various clients, customers, or even peers, we kind of see that everybody has very different problems. Everybody spells it out in the most unique possible way. At the same time, there is always a common thread of solution that kind of lies across, when you talk to different people with amazingly different challenges and different perspectives as well. So one thing that stands out for me in term is even beyond adaptability or even beyond failing fast is being inclusive of different perspectives. With very minimal to no judgment. Obviously, it's extremely difficult for all humans to do that. To live their lives without judgment. We all do that, but how early can we kind of come back to the path where instead of being a judge, we become an observer. We kind of understand, empathize, and offer help or suggestions in terms of the situation that is. So that's my quick 2 bits on it.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, I would implore audience to just post your questions. I see one already, and I'm gonna call it out. It's really a turncoat question saying that, are there any potential downsides to promoting a culture of embracing failure? What are the risks and how can they be mitigated, basically? Fantastic. Please, any of you. Others, I would request you to keep posting your questions. We are 11 minutes away from closure, so let it come in. Yeah.
So firstly, thanks a lot, Nisha, for asking that question. I think one of the biggest downsides of embracing failure that I have observed in my career is not accountability, not the fact that nobody is being accountable for it, but it's the fact that nobody wants to spell out what went wrong or what could have been done better in terms of its learnings. They the other thing is that that embracing failures, or knowing the fact that, okay, once in a while we are going to fail, that's not an excuse not to do a post-mortem analysis. And again, it's a causal analysis and not a people analysis of how things are done. So a few attributes that kind of worked really well in terms of some of these potential downsides is firstly, I think something that I mentioned earlier, having a fail fund kind of a thing where you plan and have some budgets around it. You have your leadership supporting and advocating that, and obviously you have a nice post-mortem party, if I may use that word, to kind of ensure that the learning is done, and people are just not dejected or emotional out of a failure, and they move out.
Wow, wonderful, wonderful, great. Any other inputs on this question? I think really powerful one there.
Yeah. So, when I look at embracing failure as an organization, as a culture, why should it not be accepted? One of the things that I see is failure is equal to failure into two. Okay. So, whatever is that failure, we tend to multiply it because we use that as a scapegoat. We don't use failure as a learning. That's why you should not accept failure as a culture if you're not going to adapt it as a learning. Okay. When we talk about failure per se, one thing that stands out for me is, what does that failure really do to you? As an organization, if I'm going to promote saying no problem, once in a while we all fail, we learn from it, and we do the same failure again. And then we say, oh, they learned, no, their failure, my failure, I will learn. So we will have an organization, every department doing their own failure because they want to learn from their own failure. So as an organization, when we want to adapt a culture of failure, one thing, it should not be an escape route for us. If you are able to confidently build that in your people and say that failure is not an escape route, then challenging that could be much better. Number two is, whenever a failure occurs, like, Setu very rightly said, it's about what failed. It's not about who made it fail, but it's about what failed. Adding on to that what failed, why did we not consider this what when we started the process? And probably deep diving into that could help an organization, dwell on this path of accepting failure. But otherwise, if you feel your organization does not have an appetite for this and people will use it as a leak pot in the bucket, probably they should not go ahead with failure.
Perfect. Case in point, that's exactly what the next question is. Neha, thanks for posting it. How does one strike a balance between learning from failures and preventing repeat mistakes? Yeah.
So when it is repeated, it's not a mistake.
Okay, elaborate on that.
So, it's like, I will say sorry and I'll do that again. Right. So that sorry did not have any value, correct? So if I do something, it's a mistake because I didn't know it. This is what will happen. But if I keep repeating that, it's not a mistake. It's a deliberate attempt to make sure that I can irritate you to the best of my capacity. So when we talk about learning from our mistakes, one thing that stands out for me is, where all can I apply this learning so that future failures, where all can that failure occur, which I will ensure it will not, because this is the learning I got from this. Like, let's take the, number game of, we were talking about the numbers that Gen Alpha spoke about. Look at your CCD example. We lost such a brilliant business mind because he couldn't cope with his failure. And he did not learn from the mistakes that he had done. So look at Baiju's example. Kept taking loan till it reached where he had to actually mortgage his own house to pay salaries to people, to pay legal compliances, correct? So what is the mistake that you're doing? When you understand one mistake has happened, you're not gaining out of it. Are you continuing to do that mistake? What did Big Bazaar do? One of the biggest retail chain was a giant chain. It thought that coping with that failure or coping with that losses, I will have multiple places where I can get the revenue from. COVID struck. It went bankrupt. Correct? So when you do your first mistake, what is it that you've learned, and where all can this learning be applied? Not only in the place where it is actually done, but what are the multiple facets where it can be applied? Probably that's the power where failure can be transformed into a learning journey. That's what I
Awesome.
think.
Awesome. No, good elaboration. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Anjana.
Yeah,
Sorry,
to
Shashi,
add to
my
it,
yeah. Sorry, go ahead,
yeah.
Gauri.
Yeah, thanks. So to add to it, rightly pointed by Dr. Anjana, and it's very, very important to understand first or accept first that this is a mistake. Let's accept it. So the
Mhm.
system that we follow is whenever there is a mistake or there is a potential mistake which can lead to any kind of loss, including the reputational. It's not always money, because businesses goodwill is also a very important thing. So you document it somewhere and you bring in a new process. Now, when you bring in a new process, it is ensured that to a certain extent, the mistake will be avoided. Because blaming someone or pointing finger on people, so we don't have a section where we say integrity issue. It's in the others, because we always believe that people do
Yeah.
good and it is a system failure or it is a process failure. So let's bring in a process. And I think most of the MNCs work like this, very, very process oriented. So it's called as risk nucleus. You register any mistake that happens, and then you register a process also. How are you going to tackle this problem? And very, very sure that you cannot mention anything from this particular portal into the appraisal. And that's where everybody reports. So just like you said, journaling in personal life, it can be journaling. When you write it and you bring up the final summary that this is what I did and this is what I'm going to avoid, gets avoided. And in organization setup, that the process is the risk nucleus process, where you don't have any penalty for it, but you have a process improvement only piece. So that is what I would like to say. And also talking about risk pertaining to accepting the failure, then it will become a culture where everybody is complacent and nobody will put in extra effort. So the Maslow's hierarchy, the organization would never reach the level of self-actualization. So that is the biggest risk. But very good question.
Good. In fact, you answered the question that is out there, Sandra. In case you need to elaborate on the question, please feel free to post. But what you just said, Gauri, reminds me of 2010 Google Wave, right? They started a collaboration platform which just did not have any customer adoption, but they have learned the lessons, did a lot of research and analysis, and look at this now. Google, the kind of applications that we have now, very high adoption, right? So perfect. Same with the Aadhaar card, Tata Nano. I mean, I can think of several examples where none of them took off on day one, and it took quite some time there. Great. Hey, I know it's 3:58. Faisal, before you say anything, I'm going to hand it over to you. But hey, I want to conclude with one line here, saying that this has been a fantastic journey. Thank you, all of you. Some of the things I'm taking away are words such as learning versus performance zones that I really love. All three of you recommended books, which is really fantastic. Adaptability, we deep dive. Dr. Anjana, thank you so much for that. So everyone, once again, really a pleasure talking to you today. I'll now hand it over to Faisal.
Thank you, Shashi. So before we move into the Q&A session, we will be running a poll to have the participants' valuable feedback on this session. During this time, request all the participants to post their questions in the chat window.
Yeah, while you're answering it, I see Prableen, you put Chandrayaan has been an example. That's absolutely. There is a book launched on Chandrayaan, by the way. I'm just reading it this weekend. Amazing storyline there. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would like to mention, Dr. Anjana, kudos to your resilience and adaptability.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Yeah, amazing.
I don't see any question. The last question we have already taken, right? Shashi, from Neha.
We have taken it. Yes, we have taken it.
So I don't think there are any questions coming up. So thank you, Mr. Shashi, for taking us through this session and making it so intuitive and perceptive. Thank you, Mr. Setu, Dr. Anjana, and Ms. Gauri for sharing your thoughts and insights with us. It has been a privilege having you all for this engrossing session. To all those who wish to learn and grow, you can access the recording of our today's session on our YouTube link shared in the chat window. And before we conclude with today's session, we also want to thank our event partners, Geisha, NASCOM COE, Talgro, TLE, WICCI, LinkedIn Local, Ahmedabad, and India for supporting HRAI events. To know more about these associations, request you to kindly visit the links provided in the chat window. Do join us for our next session on connecting the dots on 18th of January 2024. That's it from our today's webinar. Hope to see you soon. Stay safe, take care, and bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Shashi, for
HRAI.
weaving it so beautifully. And
Oh,
thanks,
yeah.
Fazil.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you for all your
Thanks.
insights.
Bye.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Take care. Bye.